We're on.
All right.
Todd Horton, good to see you.
Hey, how are you doing, Jeff?
Everything's good. Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. And at crucial times, right? I mean, we got another terrorist incident in Europe today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the show is Eye on the Empire. I'm Scott Horton. I'm from antiwar.com, and I do a podcast, no longer a radio show. Well, I'm still on KPFK in LA on Sundays, but I dropped my daily show, Jeff, but I'm doing basically on the Tom Woods model now. I'm just doing interview podcasts because I got a book to write. I'm gonna get that live radio show out of my way so I can get that book written.
Is that really happening? I'm so happy about that.
Well, we don't actually have a deal, but I have a deal with Tom that we're going to do it one way or the other. If we get a publisher or whether we have to self-publish, either way, we're going to go ahead and get started writing it right now.
What do you mean a deal with Tom?
Well, like a handshake with him that even if we don't get a publisher, like an official big publisher, that we'll just self-publish it or whatever. We'll go ahead either way.
You're co-writing it with Tom Woods?
Yeah, exactly. So, so that's the deal. Should be good. So I'm going to get writing it. Basically, I'm going to write it, and then he's going to sort of rewrite it and make it sound nice, make it good, since he's actually a talented writer, unlike myself. I mean, I'm all right, but anyway, so that's happening. So yeah, man, I'm scotthorton.org/interviews. For everybody concerned and wonder if they're still going to be able to hear the show or anything like that, you can sign up for the podcast feed at scotthorton.org/interviews, and I'm still going to be doing interviews daily. So,
I've got the camera facing me entirely. Let me see if I can change this.
Seems fine.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, now we got it. So tell me what's going on in Belgium. What's the story with this terrorist incident? It's a big deal.
All right. Well, I don't know the exact facts of who did it and exactly why and who put them up to it, but it seems like pretty safe assumptions that this is what I call backdraft from the war in Syria, from America and allied support for the jihadist war in Syria against Assad for the last 5 years. And I don't know if it's really going to take, Jeff, but I tried to coin backdraft as a term because blowback is supposed to mean long-term consequences of secret foreign policies. But this isn't really that. These are immediate consequences of overt foreign policies that just completely blow up right in the face of the perpetrators in DC, the people who make the policies. So, for example, you just pour tons of dollars and guns into Yemen for 8 years and you get a war. That's not really blowback. It's backdraft. Remember that movie, the Ron Howard movie, where they're firefighters? And the deal is, if you have a room where there's enough heat and enough fuel, but not enough oxygen, when the firefighter hero kicks down the door to save the day, he provides the final ingredient that creates the giant fireball that blows up right in his face. This well-intentioned intervention, so to speak. So I'm not saying there's much well-intentioned about it, but I think you understand the analogy. So anyway, for 5 years, and this is just my confirmation bias speaking. Again, I don't know for a fact who did this and who made him do it or anything else, but my confirmation bias is, I warned you, I spent 5 years, since 2011 and the dawn of the Arab Spring, warning that American support, that Obama's support for the jihadists, his taking the side of the suicide bomber types in Libya and in Syria was going to lead exactly to this. And because it's almost a miracle, it's just a matter of luck, basically, that in Iraq War II, you didn't really have that many Europeans go to fight on the side of the Sunni-based insurgency. There were a lot of Libyans and Syrians and Saudis and Egyptians who went, but there weren't really a lot of Europeans. Well, that was in jihadi years a generation ago. And so now you had a whole group of European Muslims. I mean, we're talking about the very margin of the margin, don't get me wrong, but who were raised up all through the Iraq War, who were kids through Iraq War II and radicalized by the George W. Bush and / Obama drone war era. And then, so what did Obama do? He helped them with their jihad and the side that they took, the Islamic State and the Al-Nusra Front, and helped build them up for years and years until the fall of Mosul in 2014 and in June 2014. And then Obama decided to stab him in the back and go ahead and start launching air war against him. Now the CIA's still been funding the jihadists in Syria to a degree. But he's been bombing the hell out of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria for a year and a half now. And I mean, that's what you get for being America's ally, right? Especially a bunch of terrorists. It was obvious he was going to stab him in the back at some point. So now he did. And then so now we're supposed to be surprised that soft targets in Western Europe and or, North America are subject to revenge attacks and further terrorist attacks by the Islamic State and or the al-Nusra Front. And one more thing about it is that it's not just revenge and hate, which obviously has got to have a lot to do with it, but it's smart. Suicide terrorism is smart. The people who are the victims of it are either going to force their government to, one, back down and back the hell out of there and stop intervening, or two, double down, and which works perfect for the terrorist actors either way. The Islamic State guys especially have been predicting, that their end times apocalypse is supposed to come true. Instead of Armageddon Hill, for them, it's Dabiq in eastern Syria is where they're supposed to meet the Crusader armies of Rome, which for some reason North America is Rome. But anyway, so there you go. And so they want us to reinvade. That's their whole thing, is so they can say, see, it's the Shia and the Jews and the Christians against us, the true, real believers of Sunni Islam. That's what they want. That's their narrative. So either way we react, it works for them, if you see what I mean.
It's remarkable. And of course, in terms of the political alliances here, it just furthers the far right in Europe. And in America, I'm sorry to say.
Oh man, I got a phone call earlier from a guy who was talking about how he heard on his morning radio station, and I think it may have been you and me had this very same conversation about a friend of mine's mother during the Paris attack, and how I pick on her only because she's such a nice, innocent old lady, right? Like, she's not a political person. She's just a regular person. And her attitude is, well, maybe we should just kill them all. Maybe we should just ignore collateral damage, and maybe we should just basically rely on our racism to pretend that Arabs aren't human and that we just got to exterminate them, because or else apparently they're just going to keep on coming. And the kind of the false premise that's baked in there but unspoken is that we tried being nice. But of course we didn't. We did not try being nice. America, for one example, has been bombing Iraq for 25 years. Yep. We only stopped from 2012 and 13 and a half, and then we started bombing them again. All right. So for 25 years, we've been bombing them. But the idea is, well, geez, we tried killing them a little. We tried killing them a lot. We tried not killing them at all. And they just keep killing us. And so we're all out of ideas, except there's a big major flaw in there. Step 3 is wrong. Our government has not been leaving them alone. Our government inherited the British Empire in the Middle East after World War II, and we've been letting blood over it ever since then. And, it's just to think that after, especially in 2016, after 15 years of aggressive war, and I don't care what kind of, narratives you've heard from the Republicans about what a weak pansy Obama is. Everybody knows Obama escalated in Afghanistan, has escalated the drone wars in Yemen and Somalia, has intervened in Libya and in Syria. It's not like America disengaged at all from the Middle East. We've been bombing the crap out of them. Never even mind since George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, right? Never even mind the 20th century leading up to 9/11. Just in the 21st century, our government has been killing them over there non-stop, torturing them, everything else. This isn't a secret. This isn't a secret. The torture scandal is the biggest scandal ever. Everybody knows everything about it. And yet we're supposed to believe that, God dang, their religion makes them hate innocence and truth and goodness and white skin and people who revere the Virgin Mary, or send their daughter in a miniskirt to vote in a Democratic primary or some crap. It's just not true. It's stupid and evil. And you know what? Here's the thing that bothers me too about it, Jeff, and then I'll shut up for a minute.
No, that's all right.
George H.W. Bush and I'm appealing to the conservative in you. You're familiar enough with conservatives that you'll understand what I'm getting at. I'm not calling you one, but I'm just saying you'll understand me. George H.W. Bush was a Rockefeller Republican. George H.W. Bush lives in Kennebunkport, Maine, and went to Yale and was Mr. Rhino liberal who Ronald Reagan kicked his ass in the primaries in 1980 because he was nothing but Gerald Ford and nobody ever liked him. He was a centrist Ted Kennedy Republican. Read my lips. No new taxes. And then what does he do? Raise everybody's taxes. And so on the conservative meter, George H.W. Bush was never even one of them, right? So my question is to you, why is it so hard to disavow him? Why is it so hard? I mean, they refused to support him. They went out and supported Perot instead and handed the presidency to Clinton because they hated George H.W. Bush because he was Nelson Rockefeller. He wasn't, you know, even LBJ, who was actually from Texas, at least. You know what I mean? He was the most liberal Republican. So why is it so hard for conservatives to say, yeah, you know what? H.W. Bush got us into this mess. He invaded Iraq. Then he encouraged the Shia to rise up. Then he left them high and dry and let Saddam slaughter them. And then he stayed in Saudi to enforce those no-fly zones to protect the Shia and the Kurds from Saddam's wrath that he had encouraged. And so just failing upwards, he left Bill Clinton with a permanent occupation of Arabia. Bill Clinton kept it up the whole time. Otherwise, the Republicans might have called him a sissy for a minute or something. And then he did nothing as bin Laden sent his guys to attack us over and over and over again through the 1990s because of that intervention. Why is that so hard to admit for a conservative Republican to say, you know what, damn H.W. Bush and damn Bill Clinton to hell. This is their fault. There, simple, easy. Read my lips.
It's too abstract for some reason, and this is what's depressing. People can't get it. I mean, they just have no clue about what the world's dealing with as a result of the U.S. empire. It's just lost on people.
Like I'm trying to hit on stuff that people do know. Like people do remember 1991. I mean, unless they're kids or whatever, but they do know that, yeah, there was a war there. And I don't know. I'm trying to make it easy. That's why I'm learning from Scott Adams and the Dilbert thing and Donald Trump and all that. Forget reason and just go for identity and analogy. Right? But this was H.W. Bush that you disdain and you do not identify with. So why do you have to identify with him then?
But even that doesn't work because many of the people that are driving forward political opinion today have no memory of this. They don't even have a Republican identity anymore. So drawing on that sort of basic conservative instinct, I don't think even works.
Yeah, conservative just means love George W. Bush no matter who he kills or what lie he tells.
It means love the Republican Party no matter who they nominate. I mean, we were both there when all the Republican candidates were asked the question by, I don't know, CNN or whomever it was, Fox, will you support the nominee no matter what? And they all raised their hands and said yes.
Right.
So the principle is the party. It's no different from communism or Nazism. This is Hitler's and Stalin's principle of life. Support the party, and everything else. Nothing else matters. Everything is the party. Nothing matters outside the party. So we've got that going on in the Republican politics today, and the Democratic politics actually. Probably less so among Democrats. I mean, a lot of the Sanders supporters are very skeptical of Hillary, but certainly among Republicans, you see a great movement now to come to terms with Trump's reality, So
yeah, well, yeah, and it's amazing to me to see. I almost can't understand. I mean, in a way, obviously, I can understand fear and hatred of the right, fear and loathing of the right, but to see people actually leaving the house to go out and support Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
I don't like Sanders at all. Really, I disagree with him.
I don't know. That now
I can understand why someone would believe in him. But for someone to go and spend part of their day supporting Hillary Clinton, it's like they're just must be living in a different universe than me. I just can't understand it.
But I tell you, Scott, I have the sense that and I don't understand that, and maybe it won't happen, which is why Trump's probably going to be the next president. I was just on the campus yesterday. I may have told you this in a phone call before this, but I had a very disturbing thing happen to me. I was just on the campus of Emory University, which
I read about that.
Okay, so can I tell you, because I was there?
Please do, please.
Okay,
you were there.
I was there for a campus tour, right? And I'm walking along. Suddenly, there's chalk on the sidewalk. It's Trump 2016, Trump. And it's not just on the sidewalk. It's on fences, and it's not just on fences. It's on statues, and also on windows, and on walls, and like the pro-Trump propaganda was smeared from one end of the campus to the other, and chalk. And it was very scary and very weird. And I can tell you, for the students, the overwhelming majority. This is just so we understand something about Emory. It's a private university. Okay, it's a research university. It costs $100K a year to attend. So your degree is worth $500,000 basically by the time you get out of it. Wow. The students are specialized in research science. Okay, so they're extremely. It's hard to say there's a more, because Harvard and Yale are filled with privileged people, right? But Emory is like, to get in, you have to have. You have to be in the 99th percentile of your scores, and I've never been on a campus, and I know I've been there many times, and I know many students. These are very serious people. The idea of campus politics, like you read in the press, it doesn't exist there, right? So this is a private university, and everybody's happy. It's filled with foreign nationals, non-whites, basically 40%, probably 60% women. And they wake up one morning, and the entire university is taken over by pro-Trump propaganda, right? So this, and they're living in times in which, you've got the leading candidate for the Republican nomination, saying nice things about internment camps, unable to answer the question whether or not he'll use tactical nuclear weapons against foreign countries, calling for an expulsion of illegal immigrants. And calling for a ban of Muslim immigration to the U.S. So they're already feeling under attack. Like, am I in the right country, the right place? What's going on in America? They wake up one morning, it's nothing but Trump propaganda, all from one end of the university to the other, unprovoked. Because as far as I can tell, there are no Sanders activists here. There are no left-wing, troublemakers here. And it's very intimidating and very scary. And also, the amount of...
I mean, we're talking about chalk drawings up, right?
Yeah, but it was hooliganism and it was vandalism, because to have got, I myself, and I think about this stuff a lot when I go into anywhere. I think, oh, what kind of work would it take to get rid of this? Because it clearly appeared overnight. I was there in the morning, and I don't even know how you would begin to deal with this. I mean, like, it was extremely offensive. This is again a research university, non-political, right? I mean, nobody's doing anything except just like studying like behavior of earthworms or whatever, right? And suddenly it's like Trump, and Trump, to a lot of people who, I mean, the very word itself is equivalent to the N-word or something like. I mean, it's a very, I mean, this is a guy who's threatened, foreigners with expulsion, so. It was a very alarming and weird thing to happen on the Emory campus of all places that is decidedly non-political. Yeah. And I don't even know what it would take. Like, I felt very bad for the administrator of the campus, because it was like, what, you wake up in the morning, somebody says, well, there's Trump propaganda all over the campus. So he's like, oh my God, who do I give the order to? Do I take off all the maintenance people on the campus to take out squirt bottles and water bottles and go
wash? You're not overreacting about this.
I was there.
I read an article about, the kids all crying to the administrator about what a safe space this is supposed to be, and they all sound like a bunch of crying kindergartners. And you sort of
but I can tell you, having been there before the reaction, I can totally get it. I mean, it was very weird. The buildings are are in pink marble. You know, I mean, this is a beautiful, serious campus, right? And suddenly it was like hooligans took over the campus like overnight while you were sleeping. Some people just went throughout the university and strewn all this propaganda everywhere. I mean,
that seems a little overwrought to me, but I do think that, you know, there is a point
Scott,
that
I
you
can
made
tell you,
there
I
about
was there.
people.
Nothing I'm saying is overwrought. I mean, it was weird because I was walking along and thought, well, that's weird, a Trump thing. Well, that's weird, it's a Trump thing. But after like 1,000, you know, it starts to get like spooky. And as an administrator, I wouldn't even have known what to do. I mean, this is a piece. Look, I mean, if I can explain the ethos of the campus, the number one thing that everybody thinks about here is getting good grades. That's it. It's like you're privileged to be here. You got in through hard work in life. Get good grades. Study with your professors. That's all they think about, right? That's it. This is not like the high profile cases of antagonistic universities. This is a peaceful place where everybody's thinking about just studies, and suddenly the whole place is festooned with this stuff by people we don't even know. Somebody asked me, "How do you know it was Sanders supporters?" Well, it might have been. But I mean, it seems weird. Like, why would somebody worked very hard, and it was clearly a team. It was like a lot of people involved here. There's no way in one night you could do this. I don't even know how you do it. How did they do it without getting caught? I don't even know. But it was scary and weird, and it broadcast a symbol basically to every foreign national in this very multicultural, diverse university focused on science and studies. You're not wanted here. This is America. Get the hell out. You don't belong here. And that was the symbol. It was. I don't want to use the word terrorism, but vandalism. But it was hooliganism. I don't know what. But it was very intimidating and harassing. I mean, and I asked several students. I said, "Hey, what's going on with this? All this stuff everywhere." And people were just like mortified. They're like, "I don't know. I've never seen anything like this before." I mean, they're unused to having their private home taken over by vandals, just like overnight. So, I mean, I saw there was a student reaction. They're like, "Why didn't you get this off sooner?" and stuff like that. And I'm sympathetic with it just because, I mean, it was scary. It was a scary environment to suddenly wake up and. It would be like if you woke up in the morning and went outside your front door and there's a burned cross on the ground. Or, I mean, it's just like, okay, they didn't harm you, but clearly there's a signal being sent here, And I'm just telling you, that's the environment we've got in this country right now.
Well, I'll tell you, man,
I just saw it, and it was very...
I understand what you're saying. That they weren't just saying like, "Boy, we sure do like
up with Trump." No, it was
party
like
leader at the moment,
right?
They were using it as an insult, and it's important to note that his name alone can be used to intimidate somebody. On the other hand,
exactly right.
It's incumbent upon people to be resilient and not so easy to intimidate too. And here's the thing, Jeff, like I understand what you're saying, but you got to recognize too, this is the next president of the United States we're talking about. He's the front runner of the Republican Party, at least, even if he's not the president. He's the major party candidate this time around. So it's not like they're saying, David Duke for president or something like that, where there's only one meaning to that, right?
Right.
The meaning to that is...
Because I posted this on my Facebook account, and I mean, I'm so naive, but my own followers are like, "Oh, wamp, oh, pussy, why don't you grow up? This is free speech." It's like, vandalizing private property in a peaceful community of scholars is not, the same thing as free speech. I mean,
it doesn't sound quite as bad as you make it sound. Like a cross burning versus chalk on a sidewalk.
Scott, let me just put it this way. I was there in the morning. I saw it throughout the day, right? I mean, I don't know why I happened to be there. I mean, I was doing a campus tour, right? I just happened to be there. And then I see the press about it, and it's like, oh, here's a bunch of crazy leftist students whining about their plight, because somebody, likes Trump. That's not what it was. It was extremely weird and spooky. It was like unexpected too, right? This is your home. You always expect everything to be fine. I mean, it's a little bit, compared to cross-border, I think it's right, because the students get out of their dorms, they're walking to class and like, wow, this is weird. 10,000 Trump, things in front of me. They get out of class, it's still there. Like, who's going to clean this up when? And they go to lunch.
Yeah,
they
but
come out of lunch.
Crossing your yard, you get your rifle and load it, and you make sure your girls are standing behind you.
My sympathies are with the administration here, actually, and I think the sort of the protesting students are being unsympathetic to things a little bit, just because I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I can tell you, like, walking through the campus, I had an overwhelming sense that if I were in charge of maintenance here, I wouldn't know how to deal with this. It was just too much. It was everywhere. It was
Pressure
random.
washer.
What? Yeah,
Pressure washer.
but I thought about this as I was walking along. I thought, how many pressure washers would it take and how long? Because it was on the chemistry building and on the music building and across campus at the business school. And it was on this sidewalk. And, oh, here's some on a window. Here's some on a statue. It's like you would have to divert. In order to get that done in a day, you would have to have diverted your entire staff, probably like 50 people working, a good part of the day. And during which time they're not doing what they're otherwise. And I don't even know if they have 50 people. This is, I don't know if they have 50 people. It would have been a Herculean effort to get it done in the day. So the students, though, react to this by going, oh, if it had been the N-word, you would have gotten it off right away, or, whatever. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but I kind of get why they had I mean, I was alarmed. I mean, it was just weird, Scott, I can tell you, to go to an Ivy League university and see the place entirely vandalized, overnight, by somebody nobody knows. It was a spooky situation, but I would not have wanted to be the administration to, put in charge of cleaning this up, because it was uncleanable. And yes, and this is the other thing people are saying on my Facebook page, oh, who cares? It'll go away the next rain. Yeah, but when's the next rain going to come? I mean, you don't necessarily know. So you definitely have to do something, right? You have to do something. This is your property. People are paying $100K a year to attend this university to experience peace and study. And instead, the whole place is taken over by Trump. You got to act. You got to do something. You can't just wait for the next rain. So I just, I feel bad for the administration. I don't think they meant any harm by it, and I cleaned it up sooner than they did. It was an impossible mess. You couldn't have cleaned it up. But you can see, so Scott, you and I talk about this a lot. The left and the right, they play off each other. And this is a good example of that, right? So the Trump supporters destroy university, deface everything. And then the left is like, hey, why didn't you clean this up sooner? We want a safe space. The administration doesn't act fast enough. Then the press gets a hold of it and makes fun of these poor kids, like, oh, babies, grow up. This is the real world, and they get lectured, So, it's a funny back and forth. It's not funny. It's tragic. And reminds me of 1931 Vienna or something like that. It's very alarming. And it's weird. It's like if I had been a student from India or Africa or wherever attending this university, and I'd come out and seen this, I would have tried to like buck up. South's a wonderful place. The South, right? We already have enough baggage. All right. The South's a fine place. This is not a problem. This is just a few people just did this. It's not a problem. But in the back of my mind, I might be thinking, what's going on in this country, actually? Am I even welcome here? Why am I getting a degree here? Am I safe? They're outside my dorm room while I'm sleeping. What's next? Are they in my dorm room? I get it. I mean, also remembering these are 19, 20-year-old kids. So anyway.
Well, and, we don't know who they are that did this. They may not have been menacing Trump, supporting brown shirted thugs at all. They may have been students there. They may have been
It's
also
totally
science
possible.
geeks or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's totally possible. I guess it's hard for me to, and really anyway, whatever it is,
I see
the
what
whole
you're saying. The
it
problem
breaks my
here is,
heart.
of
It
course,
breaks my
is
heart.
that the proper last name of the front runner Republican candidate is
Right.
not quite a swastika. You know what I mean? So it's certainly, at least, even if somebody meant that in the meanest way, it sure has a lot of plausible deniability baked into it. I'm supporting the most popular presidential candidate ever. So what's your problem? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and somebody said something like, "Well, I mean, chalk. I mean, it's funny. It's funny. The peanut
Yeah,
gallery,
chalk too. Yes, it's
right?
not quite a cross burning, you know.
Right. The peanut gallery is funny because it's like, okay, chalk, whatever. Why not spray paint if you really meant harm? But I mean, look, if you are a vandal at a campus and you've got, midnight to 4 a.m. By the way, I don't even know how they get away with this. Actually, I mean, like, do they not police things on this campus? I mean, this is one of the tragedies of the event. It means more policing. It means they're probably going to put up barriers to getting in. It means they're going to probably screen people who park in the public parking lots. So more police state as a result. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
But if I had between midnight and 12 and 4 a.m. to do something like this to a nice university, I would not take cans of spray paint and do this, because if you actually truly make permanent damage to private property, then the police get involved. They're going to ferret you out. They're going to find out what kind of where these come from. I mean, then there's a lot of intensity to find the perpetrators. Because it's chalk, it's more like, we washed it off, everything's fine, and I'm sure there'll be no investigation whatsoever. So in other words, the chalk allows them to get away with it. So if I were planning to do this, if I were a Trumpish thug, I would have used chalk. And also, I think chalk is basically faster, right? And you just go and they move on. And I can tell you there were, when I say thousands, okay, it was truly one end of the university to the other on every single building in very surprising places, on poles, on steps, it's just like, just when you think you weren't going to get a Trump announcement, you bumped into another one. I mean, it was just literally everywhere. There had to be a huge team. I mean, I don't know how else it could have happened. Yeah. So anyway, this is the situation we're coming to in this country. Where a private university can't just have a normal life without being dragged into politics. And I see it happening, and it's like it bounces this way, then it bounces that way. So then the hooligans do this thing with the Trump, then the lefty students go, hey, I'm feeling unsafe. How come you didn't clean up this up sooner? Give us more diverse faculty, and so on and so on. And then the right makes fun of them. Ha ha ha! Look at these babies. It just never ends. This is the moment we're living in, Scott, right now.
All right. So would you rather have the right wingers dissatisfied and out of power with Hillary Clinton in, or would you rather have them all mollified for the next 8 years with Donald Trump?
Can I tell you about a lunch conversation?
I got to switch off back and forth.
Wait a minute, Scott. Can I tell you about a lunch conversation I had today with a guy? I won't even tell you his name.
Sure.
But this was an amazing scenario he says to me, right? So just get this. If you want to think about bad things, there's a Republican convention. It's a brokered convention. The establishment can't stand Trump. So they steal the nomination from him and put in their guy. And then that guy loses to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Bill Kristol said outright, admitted that was the plan. That's exactly what they want to do.
What is it with the neocons? I mean, they have an amazing instinct for, doing exactly the thing to whip up the far right. I mean,
yeah, they talked about this on one of the Sunday morning shows, and they said, well, yeah, I mean, then you're definitely going to lose in the fall. And they say, hey, Donald Trump winning is worse than Hillary Clinton winning, so we don't care.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine 4 years later? What happens 4 years? So why don't these people think long term? They didn't think about this in Iraq. They didn't think
They're
about
all a bunch of Democrats anyway. Richard Pearl was always a Democrat anyway. Just because they got jobs in the Reagan administration doesn't mean they're Republicans. They always were Harry Truman, Scoop Jackson, Democrat. Cold Warrior Democrats. That's who they are.
I think there's not gonna be any putting down the Trump movement. After 4 years of a stolen nomination, losing to Hillary Clinton. I mean, a feminist internationalist. I mean, what this country looks like at that point. I mean, chalk is going to turn into something very differently at that point.
I don't think they're not going to steal it from Trump. Trump is already making nice with, everybody with real power in the Republican Party. He just has to get far enough ahead of everybody else so that it becomes out of the question.
Yeah, in the end,
what are they going to do? But ultimately,
he's going to become a mainstream Republican.
Bill Kristol is a pussy. You know what I mean? He's all about watching you and you and you go fight. But Bill Kristol actually getting in a fight, Bill Kristol helping to arrange a convention where they steal the nomination from the guy who beat everybody else by tens of millions of votes or whatever it is, and then actually have to face his supporters. I mean, in this case, it's pretty clearly like working class, blue collar, white collar distinction between, who's on whose side here. And I think ultimately Karl Rove and Bill Kristol are too big of cowards to steal, physical cowards, to be in the same town with a bunch of Trump supporters after they steal it from him. The WWE crowd, rip Bill Kristol from limb to limb, which may be the best thing that ever happened in North America, actually. But
yeah, it's a very interesting prospect, really. On the other hand, what happens if Trump does become president? Actually,
that would be a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare, but maybe it's the best possible situation. I mean, I don't actually know. It's hard for me to say. I think the good side is that the Trump supporters are going to learn the lesson that you can't actually manage society from the top down. He will fail immediately.
No. Your flaw there is the Trump supporters will learn. No, they're not gonna learn.
So they'll just be encouraged.
Yeah, of course. I mean, remember how you've lived through enough of these cycles now. I know I have, to see how it goes when conservatives get mad that they don't have any power and influence for a little while, and then they get happy that they got some again. And the days of 2002 and 2003 weren't that long ago to me. That's what right wingers really are. They're the Free Republic comment section. That's the heart and soul of conservatism. So,
well, this is what conservatives have yet to acknowledge, and I'm looking forward to the day when they do. That Trump is their painting in the attic. Trump represents everything they've ever stood for, just on steroids. On social media steroids, as somebody put it today. His policies are just a ridiculous version of the stuff they flirted with now for 30 years, actually.
Yeah. Yep, that's certainly true. But yeah, no, his presidency, I think he'll learn to get along just fine with the Republican Party and more importantly, the military and the national security state. And I imagine on his first day in office, he's going to meet with the generals and the admirals and the CIA and say, you guys go ahead, do whatever you want. Just let me know.
Well, I was intrigued. Did you read the Washington Post interview? By the way, I didn't see their respective speeches at AIPAC. Do you want to give like a basic report on what they said? I mean, I wanted to. I mean, I was interested, but what did Hillary Clinton say and what did Trump say?
Well, they both said the exact same thing, which is whatever Israel says goes. And Donald Trump used Joe Biden's phrase, no daylight. There can never be any daylight whatsoever between Israel's policy and our policy. They both promised to be horrible on Iran. They both promised to be horrible on the Palestinians. I think Hillary Clinton said the word settlements, but just barely in passing. Basically, her entire speech was based on the premise that the Palestinians are the ones occupying the poor little Israelis who need our help, which is the world's worst damn lie. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. But that's the way Trump put it too. Trump says he'll move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Trump said that.
Yeah. And, all the standard right-wing talking points. He didn't stand up to them one bit. And you know what? I don't think he probably knows the first thing about it. What's the West Bank? The West Bank of what? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't really care. Pay me. He doesn't know. And Hillary Clinton is just absolutely in the tank for the Likud. Oh yeah, they both swore they would invite Netanyahu to the White House as their first act as president. You know, it's a disgrace. And to think, what's funny is that we're even having this conversation. Hey, what did the front runner presidential candidates say when they went to a lobby representing the interests of a foreign state? When they got down on their knees and pandered and begged and swore to give all our money to them and pretended along with them that they're the victims of those that they oppress and murder. Give me a break. I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely disgusting. And you know what? I don't know who I'm paraphrasing, but there was a guy who wrote in the American Conservative magazine, this historian, back in 2003 about the Iraq War, where he said this is unheard of in history, that you would have a satellite state of a major empire that can make the major empire go and fight all the satellites' wars for them. And they don't have to fight any of the wars for us. The whole thing is just completely backwards in the most tail wagging the dog sense you could imagine, you know?
Yeah.
And,
wow.
And there's brand new, by the way, and we already knew this, but there's brand new Hillary Clinton emails. I urge everybody to go to news.antiwar.com. That's the great Jason Ditz there at news.antiwar.com. And new emails show, and they're all available at WikiLeaks, that as in the accusations all along, the reason Barack Obama's administration pursued regime change in Syria at the expense of even supporting bin Laden loving, jihadists, the al-Nusra Front and Ahrar al-Sham, and in effect, at least, the Islamic State as well, was because that's what Israel wants, because that's how to mollify Israel over the nuclear deal with Iran. And that's how to mollify Israel over the fact that George Bush did what Ariel Sharon and Benjamin Netanyahu wanted him to do, which was overthrow Saddam. Except that, guess what? Benjamin Netanyahu and Ariel Sharon are stupid. And instead of getting a nice new ally pet of Israel like Jordan, they got increased power and influence for Iran. And Iran's sock puppets took over Baghdad, and the whole thing was a complete disaster. So now the consolation prize, since they can't start Iraq War II all over again against the Shia they fought for, is to turn around and fight against them in Syria and try to overthrow Assad, who is an Alawite, which is sort of kind of Shia and is in alliance with the Shia minority in Syria, and overthrow him and break that alliance and take them away from Iran. And in fact, in one of these emails, it's Jamie Rubin, who is a former State Department flunky who lied us into war with Kosovo in '99, who is married to Christian Amanpour from CNN, who lied us into war from, I don't know, 1990 on, I guess, and never stopped. And in his advice to Hillary, he's saying and this is in 2012 when a lot of people thought this, he's saying there's a real danger that Netanyahu is going to do a sneak attack on Iran, Japan, Pearl Harbor style, dishonorable sneak attack on Iran, which would, of course, drag us into war and, of course, destroy Obama's attempted negotiation over their nuclear program. And so his advice to the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, is, so we really ought to step it up against Assad to try to mollify Netanyahu so he doesn't start a war and drag us into it. Nothing in there, by the way, about how, so Secretary Clinton, I suggest you read Netanyahu the Riot Act and you tell him we're the empire, not you, and you'll stand down and you'll do what you're told and you won't bomb unless we say so, and enough out of you. Nothing like that in there. It was like, oh, Miss Secretary, here's what you need to do to make Benjamin Netanyahu feel better so that he doesn't do the horrible, terrible thing we don't want him to do. It's amazing to read. It's incredible to read, honestly.
Yeah, that is amazing. I've not seen any news about this, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, it ain't in the New York Times, but it is in WikiLeaks, and it's on antiwar.com.
Yeah, that's just stunning. My goodness.
Yep. And in fact, in case, you know, I don't know, people don't like firsthand documentation of WikiLeaks, in the Atlantic magazine in 2012, Obama said the same thing to Jeffrey Goldberg. Jeffrey Goldberg said, geez, if we overthrew Assad, wouldn't that be a great way to weaken Iran? And Obama said, that's right, Jeffrey Goldberg. If we overthrow Assad, that'd be a great way to weaken Iran. And oh, yeah. And innocent civilians, we care a lot about them. That's why we're backing the terrorists and prolonging this war as long as we can, and seeking this bloody regime changes because we love civilians so much. Don't let me forget to mention that.
Well, what was your sense of the Washington Post interview that Trump gave yesterday? I mean, there's a lot of news and talk about it. Several people I know listened to it. I only read excerpts of it and read his comments on his new national security advisors, but beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah, I read like the first half of it, and I just, God, it's like listening to Hillary Clinton reading Trump. I just can't do it. I gotta force myself to trudge through. What is he even talking about? Most of the time, I don't even know what he's trying to say.
No, it's all a little bit nutty. But he did give some specific names of people he's listening to.
Yeah, and they're all bastards. All of them are from the military.
Well, they all, and I mean, they all of a certain ilk, right? I mean,
yeah, this guy Walid Faras or Walid something, I forget. He is how do you say it? The Phalangist Christians in Lebanon, and he was, in other words, he was part of the militia that fought with the Israelis in their occupation of Lebanon, and I don't want to overstate it, but I think he was at least implicated being part of a group that was accused of war crimes during that. I don't know if anybody ever accused him of actually doing it, but the guy's a total Lebanese Christian fanatic who, you know, gets off on demonizing any Muslim group basically that he possibly can. So,
yeah,
you know, that's, and in fact, I have it here somewhere. Let me find the link here where they have the guy's name. Faris. Is that what I said? Walid Faris?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a complete kook. And then the other guys are mostly, I think, pretty obscure. One of them is from the Council on Foreign Relations and the Hudson Institute. The other one is a former general who was an operative at, or a vice president or something, a corporate vice president at Khaki International. And they're basically a mercenary outfit that was accused, I'm sure were guilty of torture at Abu Ghraib prison, along with the special forces and CIA and everybody else, the National Guard there. So, and then one of these guys, was it Schmitz, was an aide to Paul Bremer, the viceroy of Iraq, who took the worst, dumbest war ever and made it 100 times worse than it had to be by completely dissolving the state and the army and replacing it with nothing but chaos.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, all of his advisors represent a weird aspect of U.S. foreign policy, and that people don't understand. That over the last 20 years, many aspects of it have been privatized because inevitably the public sector can't secure anything, it can't do anything, right? It can't surveil people, it can't keep the generals safe, it can't do anything, it can't, clean up after war, and so massive swaths of U.S. foreign policy has been so-called privatized. With these
important ironic quotes there, because it really should be spelled two different ways or something, where you have privatization where the market takes over a function, cut and dry, simple as that, and then there's something else where the government gives a contract to a private company to carry out state powers, which is an entirely different question.
This is the kind of a dystopian left-wing sort of dystopian nightmare where all the functions of terror and surveillance are taken over by private companies, and that's what we're living through right now. And these guys who are the leading people in this industry are now Trump's advisors. Right. I mean, they're swarming around him like buzzards. Really, They understand his future power, and they want to be in good with him. And as a crony capitalist himself, he's very sympathetic with these people.
Sure.
So they're going to be advising him in the future. So, this is what it's come down to. And some of these people represent, the surveillance the NSA can't do, they can do. The bombing, the cleanups and the security detail that the public sector they don't, are not trusted to do. These companies do, and these are now Trump's advisors. So our choice is essentially, it's very strange what it's come down to. There really is red shirts and brown shirts. I mean, Hillary Clinton's, pensions are for the public sector. His are for the crony capitalists, on the take, fake private sector.
Right.
That's what's going on. That's our choice right now. And unfortunately, I mean,
but also both too, right? I mean, Hillary's brought up by the Mercs, and Trump will at least eventually be just as in tight with the national security state himself.
Yes, that's right, because you can't work with one without working with the other, but this is the first time Trump sort of tipped his hand, and I thought it was extremely interesting. And it made sense of all of his comments that he's made about, let's shut down the internet, let's surveil people, let's force Apple to cough up, to change his operating system and so on. He's now in bed with the people who would make that happen.
Yeah. If there's anything surprising about it, if there's anything surprising about the list, I think it would be the lack of stature. I would have expected more famous right-wing generals like Jack Keane and people like that to be his official advisors. I never was expecting him to go for the realists like Lawrence Korb or anybody who's reasonable at all. Anthony Kordsman or anybody like that. But
in the same interview,
he also even have like the worst Fox News generals that I would have thought he would have.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And his anti-NATO, sort of spirit, which, on one hand you sort of welcome. On the other hand, I mean, my first thought was, to what extent is NATO, even a slight bit of check on the U.S. nationalist, empire?
No, it makes it worse. No, it's a very perverse incentive, the NATO alliance. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely must make it worse, but I'm just not sure that being like anti-NATO is a good signal. Just automatically on its own.
It's very interesting actually that you bring this up. This is there's a neocon wrote a thing for Politico. I forgot who, but it was a couple months ago, and it was saying, "Hey, Trump actually really does have a foreign policy." And he's had it for a long time. And here are quotes of him going back over the last 30 years and what have you. And a constant theme, it's much more like an old right kind of complaint than a real libertarian one, but sort of kind of. He says, all of our allies are taking advantage of us. We have all our troops in Korea and Japan and Germany, and we pay all their costs.
Right.
And so they ought to either pay us tribute, or we ought to bring our troops home. Now, he doesn't exactly say it like that. He usually emphasizes the former. They ought to pay us tribute and at least pick up their fair share of the thing. But I think that that's actually like possibly a thing he really does believe for a long time in a row, that, they're ripping us off, man. And so why should we pay Germany's way? Why should we pay Poland's way and the rest of this stuff? And of course, what's funny is when I saw it on CNN, Anderson Cooper's like, "Oh my goodness, what do you think, panel of experts?" That he would say that right at the time when Russia is rising. Well, that's a bunch of crap. That's a bunch of made up crap. That Russia's doing anything other than defend itself from American imperial provocations. Give me a break. We overthrew the government in Ukraine. We backed the kook that started the war in Georgia in 2008. Did everything we could to overthrow Assad, and in doing so built up a massive jihadist army that is a far more direct threat to Russia than it is to us. But meanwhile, Vladimir Putin could occupy all 3 Baltic states in 45 minutes if he felt like it. And yet he doesn't, because he doesn't want to, because Anderson Cooper is completely full of crap. So, but meanwhile, this is the narrative you're supposed to accept, that wow, we need NATO more than ever, I guess, to protect Europe from the Soviet Union, which has moved its western border approximately 2,000 miles east of where it used to be. But anyway, yeah, they're coming for us. You know, the whole thing is completely ridiculous. So Donald Trump, I think he could, and see, here's the thing too, is he's looking for the general. And this is a way, and I don't know how well he'll play it. He's kind of a dumbass, so he'll probably botch it. But I think that he understands the broad strokes of the smarts of attacking Hillary from the left on the wars. And she is such an idiot that she thinks it's smart to attack him from the right. Because everybody that she knows that that's really smart. Everybody that she knows read Robert Kagan's book and thinks that that's just great. Right? But she doesn't understand that that's not what everybody thinks. That's just what everybody that she knows thinks. So Donald Trump, when he says, yeah, we knocked the hell out of ISIS, but then we come home and rebuild this country and leave the rest of the world alone and quit messing around over there, people like that. And Hillary has already announced a trial balloon that, like, I'm not giving away everything yet, but certainly one focus of my attacks on Donald Trump will be that he wants to diminish America's standing in the world. In other words, she wants to attack him from the right on the empire. And she wants to throw him a slow ball, and he is going to knock it right out of the park. That's right, everybody. Hillary Clinton, she's the worst warmonger in the world. Why, in fact, when I look at her out of the corner of my eye, she looks just like Dick Cheney over there, trying to blow up everything and ruin everything for everyone. So if you want your other son killed too, vote Clinton. And she cannot overcome that because she thinks it's smart. She is running as Jeb Bush that he just crushed with his pinky finger. She's going, no, I'm going to be Jeb too. I'm going to be even better. I'm going to kick Trump's ass, she says. You know.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're coming to. And Trump, you know, is at some levels smarter than any, you know, current politician or many politician years, understands that this is, you know, an impulse on the American people. I mean, we're sick of the globalism. And you know, he's tapped into that in a way that nobody else
kick
has.
ass. We're gonna kick ISIS ass so that you know that he's still a macho man and he's not being a wimp like that wimp Rand Paul, who actually is not a wimp, who is as much of a hawk as Donald Trump is, in fact, on ISIS, for example. But Rand has a personality of wimp. So Trump makes sure that, oh yeah, we're gonna build up the biggest military in the whole wide world, but never use it. And that's what he says. I'm not saying I believe him, but I'm just saying that's his sales pitch.
There's echoes of Robert Taft here, you know, and that's giving him too much credit in a way. But there is that. But we haven't seen this kind of spirit alive in the land since it. Just reading what Trump said about NATO reminded me of Taft's book Foreign Policy for Americans, which, by the way, is a very disappointing book, and I'm not even sure it's available, but. If you're looking to find a tribute to peace and free enterprise, you won't find it in this book, actually. He was quite a nationalist and even a militarist. You know, I mean, he was good by the standards of the time, but not a libertarian by any stretch, you know?
Right.
And that's a little bit the way people are feeling about, my friends are feeling about Trump's own foreign policy. It may be better than what the neocons have given us, what couldn't be. Actually, everything looks terrible, but it's not by any means, you know, going to secure people's liberties.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely not.
I mean, he was unwilling to answer the question, "Are you willing to use tactical nuclear weapons?" He was unwilling to answer that.
Although, you know, the transcript that I read of that, the original one had beneath it crosstalk, as though, you know, a bunch of people were talking, and that was one of the things that was thrown out. And so it wasn't like they were really following up, trying to get him to address it.
Really?
Yeah, and it was one of those where they brought it up. I don't think it was something he said, or, you know, they were trying to.
No, they kept hectoring on the question. I mean,
they did keep asking him then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I had that wrong.
And they kept reverting back. I mean, you know, I'm ever more. By the way, this is one of the reasons I'm a little bit passionate about this Emory thing. I don't believe anything. By the way, in the time that we've been here, Reason Magazine, you know, came out with a big thing about the wimpy students at Emory who can't stand it. Look at the name Trump. So, you know, I mean, you can't the to be outside of it and to not experience things, you don't actually know. So I don't know. I would have to listen to the transcript of the Trump post thing to get it right. I no longer even trust anything I read, actually.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the audio of that too.
Right.
It's pretty easy, especially for a politician. A bunch of people shouting questions at them. They can answer whichever one they want. They might pretend they're answering this guy's question, but still answer whatever they felt like.
And Trump is funny. Like, he doubles down on even the people when people misunderstand him. Yeah,
because he doesn't care. Because it doesn't matter really.
Yeah,
he can make whatever gaffe. I mean, I think maybe he's, for his own good, overplayed the racial stuff. But then again, once he gets the nomination and he starts running to the left for that independent swing vote, who knows? I mean, we might see him up there with 6 brothers behind him at every news conference or whatever, because he can just flip flop around on anything. He can change on everything. He could be, the biggest champion of Hispanic culture in our society the day after tomorrow or whatever. Why not?
And as long as we're talking about him, he's winning. As far as
right, that too. Yeah, absolutely.
And I talk about him a lot.
He's up against the liberals are so stupid. The Democrats of this country. I mean, never mind that I disagree with their choice vehemently, but they are just insane to put Hillary Clinton up against him instead of Sanders. I mean, the polls have shown for months on end, even when he was way behind and unknown, and he's made way progress since then, huge progress since then. But for months, the polls have said that he is stronger against Clinton against Trump in the fall than Hillary Clinton is. And that's because so many people already hate Hillary of all different political descriptions.
Yeah, they all hate him.
They know she's corrupt. They know she's a liar. They just won't support her.
They're going to dedicate their lives to destroying her and preventing her from being president. I mean, there was a poll that came out today, and I love these polls that give like net negatives. So, like, if you have 2 friends and both of them hate you, you're negative 100%. If both of them love you, you're positive 100%. If one hates you and one doesn't like you, it's like 0. Mm-hmm. And Trump's negatives are unprecedentedly, how do you say, low? I mean, or higher, however you want to put it. But they were like, you have to check this out.
But Hillary's in second.
Yeah. And
he hadn't started on her yet.
Yeah, he's like negative 37, and she's like negative 20. 5 or something like that.
Just wait. Here's the other thing about her is she's only ever run for she ran for the Senate twice. I forget who was her opponent the second time. The first time it was Rick Lazio, who was a nobody state congressman, the weakest Republican they could have possibly run against her. So she basically didn't even have to campaign to win her Senate seat in the first place.
Right.
She's not good at this. And her instincts are just terrible all the way around.
Oh, she's creepy. I mean, her weird, creepy laugh that comes in at inappropriate times.
It's all so contrived, Yeah. And so what she was counting on, of course, was that Jeb Bush would be the nominee. And they would have a polite little croquet game out there, and it would be a lot of fun, and we could pick which side of the dime we wanted to choose to be the leader, the conservative Democrat or the liberal Republican. And he would have never gone after her the way Donald Trump's going to go after her, but no one ever has. Donald Trump, I could be wrong about this, but it's so easy. It's almost impossible to think that he won't bring up Juanita Broaddrick. That hey, you know what? You guys talk all day long about Paula Jones this and Paula Jones that. Well, what about Juanita Broaddrick, that Bill Clinton held her down and savagely bit her on the face like an animal while he raped her for half a minute? The pathetic, premature ejaculating, face-biting rapist president. How is she going to answer that? Because I got news for you. Juanita Broaddrick's story is incredibly credible. It is so very credible.
God,
watch her interview with Lisa Myers. Bill Clinton raped this woman. Bill Clinton raped this woman. And she's got witnesses who found her with her lip all swollen with bite marks on it and stuff. Okay, Bill Clinton raped her. And Hillary's never had to answer for that. Jeb Bush would have never brought that up. And now I bring it up as it's something that is a side issue, right? It's not like going after her over Syria the way I would have him go after her over Syria. But it's a punch that he won't pull, that any other opponent would pull. But Trump won't. Trump will be like, hey, I want to introduce you to Juanita Broaddrick. You know what I mean? He's going to bring her up there on the stage. Like, show me where he bit you. You know what I mean? Like, this is crazy. She's doomed. She's doomed.
You know, it's a great talking to you. You do tend to see the future in beautiful ways. I mean,
I always felt so bad for her because Lisa Myers at NBC News pestered her and pestered her and pestered her for years. I mean, a lot of people did to get her to tell her story. And she had lied in the Paula Jones deposition, just like Bill Clinton did. And she said, nope, nothing ever happened. I don't know what you're talking about. But then when Ken Starr came and impaneled the federal grand jury, as she explained, her lawyer's son said, Mom, you have to tell the truth to the federal grand jury. Just forget it. You have to. So she did. And so but she never wanted to go after Clinton. The Republicans had tried to get her to attack Clinton for 25 years or something before this. 20 years. She never had done it. And so finally, after all these media people had bugged her and bugged her and bugged her, she finally gave the interview to Lisa Myers. And Lisa Myers did the interview, and such a credible interview. You can all go watch it on YouTube right now. Juanita Broaddrick. And then they sat on the interview, and they refused to air it for 3 weeks, or maybe it was 2 weeks, while Bill Clinton was being tried in the Senate on his impeachment charges. And many of the Republicans that did vote to impeach him, it's not quite a criminal trial. They're not bound by the same rules as a jury would be. Many of those senators said they went and read the evidence in the back room about Jane Doe number 5, Juanita Broaddrick. And even though that wasn't one of the charges, that was what made them decide they were going to remove this guy from office. And if the American people had seen that interview when it was still in the middle of the Senate trial, then he very likely would have been removed from power. And instead they buried it, and they aired it 2 weeks after he was acquitted, when no one wanted to hear it. Finally, the impeachment trial was over. We don't want to hear the word blowjob ever again for the rest of our lives. Just leave us alone. And I don't want to hear about another Bill Clinton sex scandal. And the only reporter who would even ask him about it was Sam Donaldson. And he said, go talk to my lawyer. No comment. Talk to my lawyer, David Kendall. That's it. Refused to answer. And then that was it. And no one ever talked about Juanita Broaddrick again until the age of Twitter. And that was it. She just got buried and betrayed, completely stabbed in the back by Lisa Myers, the NBC reporter, and her producers that she trusted.
But things are going to get worse. And the sad thing to me, Scott, I have to just tell you, from the bottom of my heart and my brain, is that the cause of peace and liberty, even though it might represent a majority of the aspirations of the American people, is not being represented in our political system today, and it makes me very sad. And we've got a long.
It's all Rand's fault. It's all Rand's fault.
I know that
blew it. Rand blew it so bad. Just look back at this last year. What he could have done if he would have just said, George Bush is the enemy. We're running against him. He wants to kill your other son in another Iraq war. And I'm Ron Paul's son. I might be a senator, but I'm the real outsider here, not Donald Trump, the New York billionaire. And I'm the one who wants to abolish the empire. And I'm the one who wants to reinstate the Bill of Rights. And I'm the one who wants to set this economy free. And I'm the one who wants to demolish the central bank with explosives after we, evacuate all the people out of it. And then he wouldn't have won, but he would have changed the world. He would have advanced. He would have moved the ball forward. He would have been an American hero. And instead, he completely botched it. He ran as Marco Rubio. Well, he ran at least as Jeb Bush, and he completely blew it. He had the greatest opportunity to advance the message, the ideas, the program of peace and liberty on this planet that anyone ever had in the history of all of humanity, and he blew it. This would be like if Benjamin Franklin had just refused to participate in the revolution.
Ideally, we wouldn't have to rely on politicians to make plain points about.
But the argument's got to get there somewhere. There's got to be at least somebody who can articulate these points. It ain't going to be on CNN.
It's not going to be on CNN. It's not going to be in the political system. And this is what these times, the next 4 years, are going to call on people to do: figure out what we believe in, even if the politics is just thoroughly rotten from top to bottom, left and right. What are we going to do about our liberties? And I think that's a profound challenge. It's going to ask a lot of all of us, essentially. And I by the way, I don't think that in the end we're going to lose this struggle. I think we will, and it's going to be in our lifetime. We're going to win, but it's going to be rough going between now and then, and thorough corruption, left and right, top to bottom, in the entire state. I highly recommend, by the way, you go see the movie if you need a lift. Zootopia, right? It's a new Disney movie that's really about a state that's thoroughly corrupt, and how a natural sense of decency, morality, peace, and prosperity can triumph over evil. So I hope
I hope check that out on the Pirate Bay tonight.
That's the right way, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're over time, my friend.
Way over.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. I talk way too much. I'm sorry.
You're the best,
I quit my radio show, so I got to get these things off my chest,
I'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.